All right, so I'm going to go over Go Math, lesson 7.8, page 159. Our standard is NVT 25, and I have some previous videos, but if you've watched my previous videos, we've talked about a couple rules on this particular standard. And basically what we said is that anytime you're multiplying by a number less than 1, so I'm just going to put less than 1, your final product will be less than the number you're multiplying against. Product will be less. So let's look at the first example, and that way I can explain to you what that means. So here it says, if I multiply 2/3 times 1 5/8, my product will be, we needed to decide greater than or less than 1 5/8. So if I'm multiplying 1 5/8 times this, will my answer be greater than or less than the 1 5/8? And the answer is that it's going to be less than 1 5/8 because I'm multiplying it by a number less than 1. In other words, I'm taking 1 5/8 and I'm cutting it into 3 pieces, and I'm only going to keep 2 of those pieces. I see that some of my students are on, so just letting my students know this particular film is not your homework. Somebody asked me to film this for them, so I'm doing that. But I will do your homework in a few minutes as well if you have not already. The video I did at the school was not good. All right, so when I look at number 2, but this is a good review, so maybe you should stay on, just saying. When I look at number 2, 5/5 times 2 3/4 will be, and they want to know if I were to multiply these numbers, would the product be greater than or less than 2 3/4? So if I multiply these numbers by this, will my answer be greater than, less than, or equal to 2 3/4? So originally I was going to say, it's going to be less because it's a fraction. But it's not about it being a fraction, it's about it being a fraction less than 1. And in this instance, I know that 5/5 is equal to 1 whole. So when I multiply 2 3/4 times 1, my answer is not going to be less than, and it's not going to be greater than. In fact, it's going to be equal to. If I were to multiply 2 3/4 times 1, my product is going to be equal to. So your answer will be equal to. When I look at number 3 tells me 3 times 3 2/7, and will my product be greater than, less than, or equal to 3 2/7? So will it be greater than, less than, or equal to this number? So if I'm multiplying this number by a number greater than 1, my answer will be greater than. And you can think about it like this. Let's just say that this is a bag of rice, and there's 3 2/7 pounds of rice, and that's one bag. And this would then be 2 times, or 2 bags, and then this would be 3 times, or in other words, 3 bags. So this, when I multiplied it by a number greater than 1, it became greater. It became 3 times greater than what I used to have. It became much larger. Here, number 4 says 9 times 1 4/5, and will it be greater than, less than, or equal to 1 4/5? So when I multiply this times a number, will my answer be greater than, less than, or equal to? So let's see, I'm multiplying this by a number. Is 9 greater than, less than, or equal to 1? Right, 9 is greater than 1. And so since I know that 9 is greater than 1, that means I'm taking this 1 4/5, and again, you can think about it like a unit. Here's 1 4/5 one time, but if I were to draw that unit, in fact, 9 times, each time I'm drawing it, it's becoming much greater. 1, 2, 3, 4 times greater, 5 times greater, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And so you can see, obviously, and I could go through and label all these, I'm not going to, but you could see when I'm multiplying 1 4/5 by a number greater than 1, my answer is becoming greater. Ta-da! The same thing here. If I'm multiplying 1 7/8 times 2 3/8, will my answer be greater than, less than, or equal to 2 3/8? So when I'm multiplying this, is this given number here going to make my answer less than, greater than, or equal to? Now, if you're in my class and you're tuning in, hopefully you're thinking about this as well. So I'm multiplying this by a number that's greater than 1, which means my product will also be, very good, my product would also be greater. Anytime you're multiplying whatever the number is, here's our given number. When you're multiplying the given number by any number that's greater than 1, your answer will become greater. And that includes impropers. If I'm multiplying it by an improper fraction greater than 1, my answer will still be greater. Let's look at this one. If I multiply 3 4/9 times 5/9, will my answer be greater than, less than, or equal to 3 4/9? So 3 4/9 is my given number. And if I'm multiplying it by 5/9, that means I'm taking my unit of 3 4/9, I'm cutting it into 9 pieces and I'm only going to keep 5 of them. So let's just say that this is my box of rice and I'm just using rice. I have no idea why. Maybe I'm hungry. No, it's Valentine's Day. This is my box of Valentine's Day chocolates and there's 3 4/9 pounds. If I were to take this box and cut it into 9 pieces, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, something like that. If I were to cut it into 9 pieces, I would have to get rid of 5 of those pieces. I don't even know how many lines I just drew now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yep, and I would only get to keep 5 of them. So now my answer would be less. I have less than I started with. Again, anytime you're multiplying by a number less than 1, your answer will be less than the given number you started with. It's becoming smaller because you're cutting it into pieces. All right, so let's look here. Number 7, Fraser is making a scale drawing of a dog house. The dimensions of the drawing will be 1/8 of the dimensions of the actual house. The height of the actual dog house is 36 3/4 inches. Will the dimension of Fraser's drawing be equal to, greater than, or less than the dimensions of the actual dog house? So we're going to start out by doing our cubes. So we're going to circle our numbers. We've got 1/8. 36 3/4. We got the question, which is, will the dimension of Fraser's drawing be equal to, greater than, less than the dimensions of the actual house? We know that 1/8 is the drawing. And we know that 36 3/4 is the actual house. So if I were to multiply 36 3/4, and I'm going to have 1/8 of that for its size, it's not wanting you to actually solve it, it's just wanting you to decide, will the actual dimensions be greater than, less than, or equal to the actual size? So when I'm comparing my given number against a fraction less than 1, my answer will be less than the actual size. So when they make this 1/8 of, it's going to be smaller than the 36 3/4. And the last question here, Jorge, George, however you want to call it, has a recipe that calls for 2 1/3 cups of flour. He plans to make 1.5 times the recipe. Will the amount of flour Jorge needs be equal to, greater than, or less than the amount of recipe it calls for? So same thing here. If you're multiplying by a fraction less than 1, you know your answer would be less. And if you're multiplying by a number greater than 1, you know your answer would be greater. And of course, if it's equal to 1, it would stay the same because that means you're multiplying by 1. So here he's got, my hands are shaking, but I can't find my tripod. Jorge calls for a recipe that calls for 2 1/3 cups of flour. He plans to make 1.5 times the recipe. 1 times is telling me I'm multiplying. So if I'm multiplying 2 1/3 is the actual recipe, and he's going to make 1.5 times as much, my answer is going to be greater than 2 2/3 because he's multiplying by a number greater than 1. He's making 1 full batch plus half of another batch. So your answer here is going to be greater than. So that's it for this video. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave it in the comments and I'll be glad to answer. If you're in my class and you're looking for your own homework help, I will have that video up probably about 1 minute. All right, everybody, have a great night. And oh, if you're in my class and you tuned in, if you will write the word, and this is going to be my favorite word because this person always tunes in, if you'll write the word Anna on a piece of paper and turn it in, you can get a treat. All right, everybody, have a great night. Bye.